I had just started my freshman year of college and decided to live off campus in a student apartment building. The university assigned me a roommate, a guy named David. When I first met him, he seemed pretty normal. Friendly, always smiling, and eager to chat. But over time, I began to realize that he wasn't as normal as. Within the first few days, I noticed that David had a strange habit of spending a lot of time in my room. He asked way too many questions about my personal life, but what really bothered me was how comfortable he seemed going through my things, as if it was completely normal. I tried to brush it off, thinking he was just trying to be friendly. But at night, things got even creepier. I could hear strange noises coming from his room, whispers and the sound of things being dragged. At first, I thought he was on the phone or watching TV, but the sounds were too quiet for that. Deep down, I knew something was off. One night, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to investigate. I walked up to his door and pressed my ear against it, trying to make out what was happening inside. That's when I heard it. He was whispering, talking to himself. Suddenly, the whispering stopped, and in the dead silence, I heard something that made my blood run cold. He whispered my name, Jeff. I backed away as quickly and quietly as I could, my heart racing. How did he know I was outside his door? It left me feeling even more uneasy. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it, trying to find a logical explanation, but nothing made sense, and the noises continued. Every time I heard David whispering or dragging something, my anxiety spiked. After countless sleepless nights, I knew I had to do something. I waited until David left the apartment and then sneaked into his room. My heart was pounding as I rifled through his drawers, closets, anything that might give me a clue as to what was going on. Just when I was about to give up, I found a hidden drawer in the back of his closet. When I opened it, my heart sank. Inside was a stack of photos of me, sleeping. Some of them were taken so close that I could see every detail of my face. But they weren't just photos of me, there were pictures of another guy too, someone who looked about our age. My mind started racing, trying to make sense of it all. Who was this other guy? And why did David have these photos? I took a few of the pictures as evidence, trying to stay calm. I left his room, closed the door, and went straight to the student housing office. I showed them the photos and they promised to take the necessary steps. Thankfully, they moved me to a different apartment with a new roommate. I never saw David again after that, and to this day I still get chills thinking about it. I never found out who the other guy in the photos was, but I'm sure he went through the same thing I did. When I was 23, I had to move to another state for work. Since the cost of living was high, I started looking for roommates everywhere. Facebook, Craigslist, even on a local subreddit. That's when a guy named Rob contacted me through Facebook. He said he had a room available in his house, and the photos he sent looked fine. Rob seemed like a normal guy, nothing suspicious. Even so, my parents were worried about the idea of me living with a stranger. We had a FaceTime call and he gave me a virtual tour of the house. It was modest, nothing fancy, but the location was great. Only 10 minutes from my new job. Rob seemed friendly, and since I was in a hurry to find a place, I agreed. A week later, I was moving in. When I arrived, he greeted me at the door and handed me the key. He was much shorter than I had imagined from the photos, which didn't matter, but it surprised me. He even helped me carry my bags inside. The room was already furnished, which made things easier, but of course, I replaced all the sheets and pillows with my own. The next day was Sunday, and Rob offered to show me around town. I wasn't too excited about the idea, but I agreed to get off on the right foot. He took me to see the main spots, stores, restaurants, and then suggested we grab lunch. I wasn't hungry, and the idea of a sit-down meal felt a bit strange, almost like a date. I politely declined. He then insisted we go for drinks, but I turned that down too, saying I don't drink on work nights. That's when he got weird. He stopped insisting, but the atmosphere changed completely. He went quiet, clearly upset. Even so, I continued with my routine, focusing on work. A few days later, I came home to do laundry and noticed my laundry basket had been moved. It wasn't how I left it. I searched my room and realized something was missing. One of my underwear. At that moment, a disturbing thought crossed my mind, but I tried to ignore it. Couldn't have been Rob, right? Even so, my suspicions started growing. I decided I needed more privacy, so I went to the store and bought a new doorknob with a lock. I waited until Rob was out and replaced the doorknob, thinking I had solved the problem. That same night, around 1:30 a.m., I was woken up by knocking on my door. It was Rob. He was outside, calling my name, and he sounded angry. I pretended to be asleep, too scared to open the door. My heart was racing. He kept knocking for a while, but eventually he stopped and went back to his room. The next morning, I woke up to several messages from him saying we needed to talk. I asked if it was about the doorknob, and he confirmed. I apologized, explaining it was for security, but he wasn't happy with the idea. He sent me a short, direct message. "I want you to leave today." I was terrified. Something was very wrong with him. I replied, explaining that as a woman, I needed some privacy and hoped he would understand. He didn't seem willing to negotiate. He said I needed to put the original doorknob back. The most disturbing part? How did he know I had changed the doorknob? I hadn't left anything out. That could only mean one thing. He had tried to get into my room while I was sleeping. I switched the doorknob back, but by then, I knew I had to get out of there. While I was thinking about what to do next, a knock on the door startled me. When I opened it, there was a woman around my age standing there, looking concerned. She asked if I lived with Rob, and when I confirmed, she warned me to get out as soon as possible. She told me that Rob had multiple restraining orders against him from other women and that he was a dangerous stalker. My heart sank. I was in danger. I thanked her for the information, and she gave me her number in case I needed help. At that point, I started packing my things frantically and looking for a new place to live. I found a studio apartment across town and contacted the owner. She told me I could move in immediately. I tried to stay calm and sent Rob a message saying something had come up with my family, and I needed to leave the next day. He didn't respond right away, but about an hour later, he showed up at the house asking about my message. I lied, made up a story, and he said he'd give me back the rent money the next day after he went to the bank. I was relieved that he didn't ask any more questions. But that night, everything fell apart. I woke up in the middle of the night, and when I opened my eyes, Rob was sitting at the foot of my bed. I screamed, but he put his hand over my mouth and told me to be quiet. I was terrified. I begged him not to hurt me, and in a cold voice, he replied, "Why would I hurt you?" He started stroking my leg, saying he didn't want to scare me. I was horrified. As soon as he moved a little, I jumped out of bed and ran out of the room. I grabbed my phone and called the police, hiding outside the house until they arrived. When the officers got there, I explained everything that had happened. They made Rob leave the house and talk to him. I took the opportunity to grab my things with the officers' help and left for good. The whole time the police were there, Rob tried his best to act like a normal guy, but one of the officers pulled me aside and told me that Rob had been arrested before for incidents with other women. I never saw him again after that night, but I still get chills just thinking about it. When I moved into Luke's house, I was desperate for something cheap and quick. I had just had a huge fight with my parents and didn't want to sleep on my friends' couches anymore. The house Luke was offering seemed perfect. Big, spacious, and way cheaper than I expected. He was a little weird, but honestly, I didn't have many options. When I first went to see the house, I could tell Luke was a recluse. He was kind of shy, spoke quietly, stuttered a bit, and seemed nervous. The tour was quick and he made the rules clear. No big parties, no drinking in the living room, and most importantly, no going into the basement or attic. He explained that he used those areas for storage and no one else should go there. It felt a bit strange, but I didn't think too much of it. The room he was renting out was already furnished, which was perfect for me. After a few days, I started noticing strange things. Every night, I would hear noises around the house, doors opening and closing, footsteps echoing in the hallway. One night, I woke up to use the bathroom and saw the basement door slightly open. A faint light was coming from downstairs. My curiosity got the best of me, and I approached, trying to understand what was happening. Just as I got closer, Luke appeared out of nowhere. He looked visibly irritated and firmly said, "Close the basement door." I apologized, still confused about what was going on, and went back to my room. But I couldn't sleep after that. Things only got worse from there. One day, I came home from work and noticed that my bedroom door was unlocked. I was sure I had locked it before I left. I walked in, and although nothing seemed to be missing, some things were out of place. My clothes in the drawers had been moved, and the closet door was slightly open. At that moment, it hit me. Luke must have had another key to my room. I knew I had to confront him, but I was scared of what he might do. I knocked on his bedroom door, but he didn't answer, even though his car was in the garage. Later, when I finally saw him, I tried to be polite and asked if he had been in my room. He denied it with a blank stare, showing no concern, and said he was in a hurry, then left. That made me even more suspicious and uncomfortable. That's when I decided I needed to find out what was going on in that basement. I waited until Luke left the house, checked to make sure his car was gone, and went downstairs to the basement. I couldn't find a light switch, so I used my phone's flashlight to guide me. The smell down there was awful, almost unbearable, and the closer I got to a locked door at the back of the basement, the stronger the smell became. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. Maybe that was for the best. I rushed back upstairs with my heart racing, closed the basement door, and locked myself in my room for the rest of the night. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen or what I hadn't seen. Something was seriously wrong in that house, and I knew I needed to get out as soon as possible. That night, I woke up suddenly with the feeling that I wasn't alone. When I opened my eyes, Luke was standing next to my bed, staring at me. My heart nearly stopped. He asked, in a cold, threatening tone, if I had gone into the basement. I lied, saying no, but he didn't seem convinced. He left the room, but before he walked out, he murmured, "I think you should find somewhere else to live." That was the last straw. I got out of bed immediately, started packing my things, and left as quickly as I could. I didn't even care about the rent I had paid. I just wanted to get as far away from that place, and from Luke as possible. That night, I slept in my car. The next day, I went back to my parents' house. After explaining what happened, they let me move back in, and a month later, I had found another place to live. To this day, I still get chills when I think about that basement, and I can't imagine what might have happened if I had stayed in that house any longer. It all started subtly, but now entire nights have become a living nightmare. I don't even know what it's like to sleep peacefully anymore. Recently, something dark has been invading my room at night, and I'm not talking about bad dreams. I'm talking about a physical presence, a shadow that somehow feels more real than anything else. It doesn't have a face, but I know it's there, watching me. I can't see all the details, but I feel its presence so clearly that it's almost tangible. I remember one night when things got even more terrifying. I was about to fall asleep when I noticed something strange at my bedroom door. It was like someone was hanging there, suspended by their hands. The hands looked nailed to the wood, as if they had been hammered in. Something was covering their head, and the whole sight was horrifying, like an image straight out of a horror movie. I swore I would have nightmares about it, but to my surprise, I didn't dream at all that night. However, something even more disturbing happened. I felt that shadow, the same one that's been haunting me, get closer to my bed. It was so close that I could feel the cold radiating from it. And then, I saw its eyes, two yellow lights, like eyes glowing in the dark, staring at me without blinking. These things kept happening night after night. On another occasion, the same black silhouette appeared again, but this time, it wasn't alone. Alongside it was something even more terrifying. I saw what looked like the devil that so many religions describe. A tall figure, with horns that nearly touched the ceiling, legs that resembled goat hooves, and a gaze that radiated pure evil. It was as if that being was there to show me that things could get much worse. After that, I couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. I talked to a friend who knows a bit about the supernatural. He told me that these spirits, these tormentors, might be drawn by the heavy energy my mother brings into the house. She's always been a strict person with a closed mind. Maybe that's what's attracting these things here, but honestly, I don't know what to do anymore. So far, this is all I've written down. Each night is a new challenge, waiting to see what else might appear in the dark. I just want to sleep again without feeling those eyes watching me.